Hello, I'm Dr. Will Weber, and this is the video version of a talk I gave at the Washington College Math Conference in 2022. The title of the talk is Fun in the Woods. Now, fun in the woods has a different meaning to me in that when I was a senior in college, I took a PE class. Um, the official title was Adventures in Outdoor Education, but when you get to the class the first day, the professor, who insisted on being called Tunner, said, well, yeah, that's just the name that we put in the catalog because they really didn't like the name Fun in the Woods. So this course was essentially a low ropes course. It's teaching prospective phys ed teachers different activities that they could be doing with other people. So anyway, fun in the woods. In this context, I've had a lot of fun over the last few years building mathematical objects out of wood, and so I want to go through some of these things. Now, I will limit this to a discussion of stellations and of boxes that I've made, only because of the time. There's also the matter of I sort of have a a plan, but then the plan kind of goes crazy because I can't really tell if the plan is just to show off the things that I've done or, actually talk about some math. So there'll probably be a bit of both. So we're going to start with stellations. Now, this picture down here with me and my son, this was in 2002. I built this star. It's made of 1/4-inch plywood and other lumber pieces. There's a steel bar that runs up through, it's a tube, I guess, pipe that runs up into here, attached to a steel platform that the star actually sits on. Then there's various chains from each of the points headed in towards the center, where they're attached with turnbuckles so I can tighten them down. Because we lifted this thing up on a genie lift, as you can see it here up in the sky. It was about 35 feet up. Did this around Christmas time. I still have the star. We still put it up. We don't hoist it 35 feet in the air anymore. Just set it on top of one of the animal barns. But shortly after I had published this picture on my faculty webpage as a stellated icosahedron, that was the title, I got an email from somebody claiming to be a set designer for some rock band. I can't remember which one it was. I probably didn't know the band anyway. And the guy said, I just built one of these things for the set that we're using for the concerts. It's a stellated dodecahedron, by the way, he tells me. And I'm just wondering how you got your points so sharp, that is so skinny and sharp. So I emailed back thinking, oh, maybe I could get it in with, a set designer, and maybe I could, I don't know, he had dreams of grandeur every once in a while. But so I explained to him that I can get those points so sharp because I didn't stellate a dodecahedron, I stellated an icosahedron. And here, I explained the geometry of what's going on and how stellations are not the notion of putting pyramids onto the faces of polyhedrons. It's a matter of extending the faces of the polyhedron out until they interact with different faces of the polyhedron, right? It turns out, though, that the first stellation of any polyhedron looks like you've put little pyramids on top of it. So, for instance, the stellated dodecahedron that most people know, there's 3 of them, but they know mainly the first one, looks like a dodecahedron with pentagonal pyramids put on each of the faces. The thing that they don't realize is that those pentagonal faces are just big enough so that they actually are extensions of the planes of the faces. Now we can think about stellations. Think about stellations of a cube, for instance. Each face, there's 6 faces of a cube. Each face already touches 4 of the faces. So there's one other face that isn't touching this one. The problem is here they're parallel to each other. You got opposite faces, and if you extend those planes out, they won't ever meet. So there are no stellations of the cube. A similar thing happens with a tetrahedron, where each face is already touching all three other faces, so there isn't really any more you could do. The octahedron, on the other hand, can be stellated. So here is a stellation of the octahedron, and it's made in such a way that I can see the actual octahedron there, and the way the points are connected through the plane. So this point here to that point to this point, that they're all in the same plane, and they're in the same plane as that triangle, which is one of the faces of the icosahedron, and likewise for all the other faces. I can hold this up here, let you get a little closer view of it. This is made from zebra wood cut with the laser. So yeah, it is a stellated octahedron, and it looks like a pyramid was put on each of the triangular faces of the octahedron, because that's what it is. But they're very precise size pyramids, so that the faces of the pyramids line up with the original faces of the octahedron. Next, here is that same star, the stellated icosahedron that we saw earlier, except that this one is done. It's smaller, and it's done in cedar. This is reclaimed cedar fence boards, sanded down. It's amazing how you can take wood that looks like it's just been battered by the weather. It's no good anymore. You run it through the planer and the sander a couple times, and all of a sudden you've got this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous wood. On this one, I attempted to show coplanar faces by giving them the same pattern. So you see this bubble pattern here, here, and here, and they are coplanar. Anytime you see the same pattern on it, those are coplanar faces. Here's the stack of circles here, there, and there. Those are coplanar. You can see all the different actually, that's not all the different patterns. It's sort of an assortment of them. Just right. I can't help but play with the pieces as I'm building the thing. Right? So this was carved with a CNC router. Shortly after I bought the router, it worked really quite well. Yeah, this is about 4 foot diameter, although I can get it to pass through a 36-inch door. You got to kind of weave it through, but it gets there. Here's a smaller version of that, also cut on the CNC router. This is only about 1 foot in diameter. This was given to a colleague upon her achieving tenure. This was a cherry wood that I haven't found the like of again. It was very, very red. And putting the polyurethane, I think it was polyurethane I used as a finish on this, just made it even deeper red. It was just gorgeous. Yeah. Here's another stellated icosahedron, the same stellated icosahedron. I've made a lot of these. One of the reasons I made a lot of these is because they're easy in a sense. You make 60 of the same kite-shaped piece, and it turns out that the dihedral angles here are all the same, remarkably, because you'd think that there might be a different angle on the short little edges there as opposed to the long edges. But it turns out they are the same, and they are the same angle as the dihedral angle of an octahedron. In fact, when you're making stellated icosahedrons, there's only 4 angles, dihedral angles, that you need to worry about. There are, of course, the dihedral angle of an icosahedron. Here we have the octahedron. You also run into the dihedral angle of a tetrahedron and the supplement of the icosahedron angle. So there's only 4 that you run into. So what I've done is I've 3D printed jigs for my belt sander, so I just click on the one I want, and the laser cutter will cut these pieces with, square edges, and then I bevel them to the thing I want. But it's really easy to do because I got the 3D printed jig. And each time I do a different polyhedron or star, I figure I'm going to make a bunch of them. Then I print a new jig to get the angle just right, and I can bevel the edges really kind of quickly. This one was done on a laser cutter. The school's engineering department had recently got one, and I was fortunate to be allowed to go in and learn how to use it. I thank Will Green very kindly. He was the technician over there who helped me out, and then eventually let me just do my own thing. So I would bring in wood, and we would cut some pieces. So this was cut from two pieces, a piece of maple and a piece of cherry, and it was like a puzzle. So you took the pieces apart and you mixed them back up and put them back together. So actually there are two stars that I made. One goes maple cherry maple, and the other goes cherry maple cherry. Again, the redwood, the reddish wood here is the cherry, maple is the light stuff. So yeah, so I have these two. Just these are still some of my favorite. I actually feel like I know how to do some woodworking when I get one of these things made. Wood has not been my medium throughout my career of building things. I've built a ton of stuff out of paper and tape. Nice stuff, but still it's paper and tape. It doesn't really have any structural strength. I'm amazed that they've lasted as long as they have, just because all they do is sit on my shelf. But the wood, I feel like I've made something more substantial, and the way these look, it just tickles my fancy here. Again, I'm emphasizing coplanar faces by using similar motifs. So all of these ellipses are all coplanar, and you see, you can kind of see this kind of stack of hexagons here, and one back there, and down here. Those are all same places, the same plane. This kite here and there and there, they're all the same plane. One of the things I should point out though about the building style is I made stuff with paper and tape for years. And what I'm doing here is I'm using about 1/8 inch thick wood. It's all been cut down to be about 1/8 inch thick. So when I've got the pieces that I want, I actually, once the edges are beveled, I tape them together and then glue and then fold it so that it's at the angle I want, and the glue is hold it tight. And the tape is what's holding it together while the glue dries. And so I still feel like I'm building in the same style that I was doing before. And this is good. This is good. All right, I also made this star out of bamboo. For some reason, I don't have pictures of the finished product, but here they are before being finished. Again, this was bamboo flooring that I cut the backing off of and used just the top layer. There was a lighter bamboo and a darker bamboo. This was just leftovers from a job someone else had done, and I picked up the remnants. And yeah, so this was a good one. Again, this is the same thing, the mix and match puzzle pieces to get the two different types. One more of this same stellated icosahedron that I want to show you. This was made from maple, and again, I'm going to thank Will Green over in the engineering department at school for saying to me, "Hey, Will, I've got one of these, and I can't remember what it's called." He could remember. I can't remember. That will put some high voltage to the thing, and we can burn lightning bolts into the wood. And it's like, oh yes, I have one we could do that with. So this is just plain maple. It's a nice, I really liked this one, the way it fit together. I was developing my techniques, and this one just fit snugly together. We brought it over and zapped it a few times. Yeah, this was cut on the school's laser. and zapped by the school's zapper, or whatever it's called. I can't remember. Um, yeah, this one I gave to my brother. So here's a different stellated icosahedron next. So this one still has those 12 sharp points, but it also has these other not so sharp points. In fact, these are corners of tetrahedrons. One of the stellations of the icosahedron is a compound of 5 tetrahedrons. And so that's what you're seeing is both the compound of 5 tetrahedrons and that star we've been looking at pretty much the whole time so far. This is just absolutely one of my favorite stars, is the way this one looks. Not this particular rendition of it, but the shape itself. This was made with the CNC router, and this is the way I would like to make these in the future, except that my router currently is having issues of alignment. And in fact, this is where I first noticed it, is when I was making this star. So it's made from birch plywood, so it's about, it's not a 1/4 inch thick, but it's more than an 1/8 inch thick, so whatever that is, 3/16. And so I cut all 60 pieces of this at the same time. You know, there was one big file that said cut all these things, and with the router, I can actually cut the bevels as I'm cutting the thing out, because I use V-bits that come down to point at different angles. And so I had one V-bit that would do the long edges and get the angle right. It was off by 1/2 degree, but I don't care about that. It still will glue just fine. And likewise, I had another bit for the short edges down here, which again was, I think that one's off by less than 1/2 degree, just the stock bit that you can get. And so the router was told, okay, go cut with one of the bits in, go cut all of these edges, the long edges, and then come back and stop. And then I'd switch the bit and say, okay, now go cut all the other edges. And it did. It cut all 60 pieces. In fact, I cut a few extras just in case. But as I was gathering them up, it's like they weren't all the same shape. They were, the ones on the fringes of the board were not aligned right. At the point, the little point and the big point weren't connected the way they were supposed to be connected. They're off by a little bit. So when I started putting together, you can see that there's these gaps in here where it just doesn't completely fit right. That's just a matter. I got to get the router dialed in right. I've been wrestling with it for a couple of years now. I just haven't been able to. Some days it works perfectly, and other days you put in this beautiful piece of wood and it just ruins it because it gets so far off. I just don't know what it's doing. I have made a couple other versions of that particular star. This was cut on the laser, the school's laser, in the same way that other star was done, where it's puzzle pieces, where I did a walnut piece and a cherry piece. In this case, the cherry is the very light cherry wood. So you can take the vines from from the cherry and stick them in the walnut, and the vines from the walnut and stick them in the cherry, and glue it all back together again. And I learned a lot doing this one, because this just did not work well at all. I fudged it enough to make it look pretty decent at the end, but yeah, I've got a lot of things I'd like to do differently now. One of the issues was, because it's cut on the laser, I need to bevel the edges. And it's easy enough to bevel outside edges, but where this thing is non-convex here, it was really hard to bevel those edges. I actually bought a different belt sander so that I could get the piece to wrap around the belt rather than the one I had. Anyway, yeah. I've only made 3 of these laser cut ones. So these 2 and one other. One of them I gave to my parents, and the other 2 are sitting on my shelf in the house. So this is a partial stellation of the icosahedron. This shows that a tetrahedron is in fact a stellation of the icosahedron. So if you take 4 of the faces and extend them out till they meet again, you can pick 4 particular ones, and you get a regular tetrahedron. This was made, this must have been right about the start of the pandemic, because I didn't have access to the school's laser anymore, because I wasn't, we weren't allowed to go. So this was cut on the router and then sanded down. You can see there's a lot of issues here that I didn't really get this put together quite right. The inside, the icosahedron here, I think, is a balsa wood, where the outside is, at the time I called it a mystery wood, but I know now that it's a Brazilian redwood. And I know that because I had gotten this piece from someone who thought it was cherry. He didn't know. But then later, off of Craigslist, I got some remnant flooring. Again, someone had done a job and had a couple of boxes left over. And so I bought the boxes, and it was flooring. It was a kind of snap together flooring, but it was hardwood, and it was Brazilian redwood, and it was the same color, the same grain, the same density. It's like, okay, I know what that wood is now. It's Brazilian redwood. It's beautiful stuff. Not that I did beautiful things with it here. The next time I'll do better. Anyway, so a partial stellation of the icosahedron, which is a tetrahedron. Next, here's a couple other partial stellations of the icosahedron. On the left here is just 2 of the points from the same star we've been looking at many times. The actual icosahedron, you can see in the middle here that there's a equilateral triangle right there. That's one of the faces of the icosahedron. Likewise here. The ones on the left here, it's walnut and something else. I don't know what that other wood is. I can't remember. It might have been a cherry, but it might have been a maple. I have no idea. The one over on the right here, this is the only picture I'm going to show you that's not made of wood. This was 3D printed, but this is one of my favorite. This is my own stellation of the icosahedron, partially stellated. I will guarantee you that each one of the planar faces on this yellow thing are extensions of one of the faces of the icosahedron. So this is a stellation of this icosahedron right here. I call it the icosa snitch. If you know, you know. All right, next. Oh, where did this come from? This is not a stellation. This is another project I worked on about the same time I was doing all those other ones. If any of you play Settlers of Catan, you may recognize this board. If you haven't played the game, you probably won't recognize this board, but this is my CNC version of a Settlers of Catan board. At some point I'll do a laser cut version of it as well, but I like the router because it really gives interesting texture to the pieces. The sheep hexes here are made of mahogany. The wood hexes are, what is that, walnut. The brick is padauk. The mountains are purple heart. Mountains have to be made out of purple. They're just more majestic that way. The grain hexes are oak. And I can't remember here, there's this hex here, which you can either use it as the desert or we use it as gold. This hex and the port things are the same wood, and I don't remember if they were maple or cherry. And whichever, the water going around the outside is the other one. So there's maple or cherry or maple. I can't remember which way it was. And looking at the picture, I don't really see which is which. And the number tokens here are the Brazilian redwood. Yeah, I've made maybe 3 of these boards now, I think. Yeah. All right, back to stellations. Back to stellations. What do we have now? Yes, we have, this is the first stellation of the icosahedron. This is essentially, you take little pyramids and put them on the triangular faces of the icosahedron. But not just any pyramids, they have to be just the right size so that the those diagonal faces of the pyramids actually line up with the faces of the icosahedron. So if I look at, well, actually, I think on the picture over here on the right, um, the light's really reflecting off of that one face, and you can see how this one connects down inside there and back out to there and over here. This is an idea I had. I saw someone else do something like this with some models, and I was like, I need to try that. So I can show here how the external structure that you see when you generally look at stellations is connected to the inside, and how the pieces are connected to each other passing through using the planes of the internal polyhedron. Okay. So this is the first stellation, the icosahedron, and it's made from 20 pieces that are these really, really fun shapes, almost like throwing stars or something, three-pointed throwing stars. Yeah. Anyway, there's that. Here is another stellation of the icosahedron. This one, yeah, this one is also known as the compound of 5 octahedrons. That, as you take a look at this one, this is all made of cedar. Again, that reclaimed cedar fencing. If you look, there's a darker one that has a vertex up at the top here, up front, over on the right. Maybe you can see the one over on the left here. Anyway, that is an octahedron, and there are 5 such octahedrons. But it's made, this whole thing is made from 20 pieces that look like this thing over here on the right. And they're all woven together, and yeah, this was a fun one to make. This is crazy awesome. It sits right up here on the shelf behind me. All right, here's a close-up view of this thing. Yeah. So you might ask me how I actually get it woven together, and I will tell you that a mathematician never tells a secret yet. No, neither does a magician, right? A magician, particularly a mathematical magician. I'm not giving away my secrets, but you can probably guess how I might have done it, seeing as how, it looks like puzzle pieces. So this idea of weaving them, making these things so you can see through them and see how they're connected together is just something I took to heart and started doing some more things. So here is that stellated icosahedron, which we used at the start, the big white one. This is done now where each of these pieces connects down into the middle, and then it comes back out again. So let's see, this one right here is connected up to this one there, and it's connected to that one there. You can almost see where they're connected right in here. The lighting is kind of weird. To make it a little easier to see, here's a picture during the construction phase where you can look down inside, and you can see how the pieces are coming in together and connecting down there in the middle. It is, yeah, this is a fun one to weave. It's a deeper weave than the other ones, so that there's more things crossing over each other, a little bit harder to get together, but we can do it. So here's another version of the same one. This is made from oak. It is laser cut. At this point, I'm not doing the laser cutting at the school anymore because we've made it into the pandemic. I have convinced my wife to let me buy a laser cutter of my own, so I did. I thank her very much for that. And yeah, so this one was made for my sister back east. I have several sisters, one of them. We'll come back to this one, but we've seen the vine motif before on one of the other stellations. When I put it on this one as well, I really like the way it looks. Now, if this had been a conference that was really face-to-face, I would have started this talk a little differently. I would have handed out a bunch of these stars. Actually, I would have handed out these stars because these are the ones I have made. They all have 12 points. They all would probably be called by many people stellated dodecahedrons. but only one of them. Only one of them is a stellated dodecahedron. And my plan was that I'd let them circulate. As much as I don't like having people handle my stuff, um, I think it might be worth it if people were careful to send it out there. And so at some point, once I could see that they were well circulated in different points of the room, I could say, okay, now, whoever's holding a stellated dodecahedron, please stand up. Because only one of these is a stellated dodecahedron. They all have the same symmetry in the sense that the points are in the same place, but they don't have the same symmetry in some other ways. Okay. Some of them only have rotational symmetry. Some of them only have rotational symmetry because of the way I wove it, but even if you would put it solid, they only have rotational symmetry. But they are just aligned differently, and we're going to go through these now and see how they're different. So I'm going to start with this one right here. This is a stellated triacontahedron. It's a different one than what was in the previous picture. This was the lower left of the previous. So this one right here is the one we're looking at. This particular one I built on commission for one of my cousins. And I have to say, this is one of the few of them that I've ever signed. And the signature has some significance to me in that back in the days when I was a kid, the phone book had 3 names in a row. There was T.F. Weber, T.W. Weber, and W.P. Weber. They were all right in a row. W.P. Weber was my father. T.F. Weber was my grandfather, and T.W. Weber was my uncle. And so the cousin that I built this for is the son of that uncle. So he was T.W. Weber and I'm W.T. Weber. I was named after him. And so it just was special to me to be able to do that. Again, here's an adaptation of the vine motif to put on this one. But notice on this, this is a stellated triacontahedron. How do I know this? Well, actually, another story before I tell you how I know this. There have been several times in my life when I have been on a forum or something, a discussion forum, and someone has talked about, oh, a stellated dodecahedron, and they show the picture, and it's not a stellated dodecahedron, it's one of these other things, right? It's this one. And sometimes when I correct them, people are very nice about it and say, oh, thanks, that's great. You know, I learned something today. And other people are just like, so, and actually for this particular stellation, I've done it twice. I've corrected 2 people, one of whom take it very nicely and one of whom didn't. But anyway, how did I know it was not a stellated dodecahedron? I looked at how the pieces were lined up, and I can see that this piece right here, you know, all of these that we're looking at have 60, made from essentially 60 pieces connected 5 at a corner here, right? But I noticed that this one was in the same plane as the one over on the other side, that these are coplanar. They line up in sets of 2. So those 60 faces lining up in sets of 2 coplanars means that there's 30 planes involved here. So do I know any polyhedra that have 30 planes? Yes, I do. This is the rhombic triacontahedron. It is the dual of the Icosy dodecahedron, if that means anything to you. Each of these pieces, each of these points is actually coming from, so I'm looking over here on the right at like this phase, this one, these 5 faces extended out towards you over top of that 5-fold symmetry point. So they come out. That's what's making these points. Yeah, so this is a stellated triacontahedron, not a stellated dodecahedron. This was made from walnut. And I put a question mark on maple. I have a bunch of different veneers that I use, and I have this one really, really light one that I don't know what it is. I'm just calling it maple. It might be birch. It might be something else. I have no idea. But I do know the dark wood here is walnut. All right. Next one. This is a stellated pentachus dodecahedron. So over here on the right is the pentachus dodecahedron. It is the dual of the soccer ball, right? The truncated icosahedron. In this polyhedron, there are already 60 faces. So when I stellate it, looking for something that has these 60 pieces making the 12 points, I'm only getting one piece per face. So I'm not going to have coplanar faces. That is, this little piece right here doesn't line up in the same plane with anything else. It doesn't line up with anything in the back or over on the sides. They all are in their own planes. They're in the planes of these faces. Okay. So when I'm putting it together, I'm not weaving through to connect to other pieces on other sides to hold it together. I have to actually connect it to the original polyhedron. So in the middle of this, you will see pieces of the polyhedron. In fact, it's points like this where there's 5 around that a little bit of that is still there, and then it has a tendril going off to come out to the point here. So this piece right here, you can see this going in, and it connects to something that's hidden behind that. But there's 5 things that come together back there. Do I see? There's right in here. There's some other things coming together. So yeah, in this you really can see some of the points of the original polyhedron down in the middle and how they're being extended out. The planes are being extended out to make the stellation. So this is a stellated Pentacus dodecahedron. All right. Next, a stellated Triacus icosahedron. I don't know if you can hear the lawnmower in the background, but my son-in-law is out mowing the lawn right now. So I have to pause every once in a while when he starts getting close to the window. So the Triacus icosahedron is the dual of the truncated dodecahedron. And here's the Triacus icosahedron right here. Both of these models are made of cedar, both laser cut. This one you can still see, again, because there's 60 faces in this thing, you're only getting 1 point per face, not multiples. So I still have to have some of the original polyhedron left inside, and what you're seeing is the middle of this edge. So what's left is just the center of this edge. In fact, you can see it, one of them right here, one of them right there. So if you think back to the Triacus icosahedron, no, that is the Triacus icosahedron. If you think back to the triacontahedron, where this piece was going all the way across there. In fact, the way this one is being stellated is, as I said, this is coming out from this side. When I bend that rhombus along the long diagonal, I can turn this triacontahedron into a Triacus icosahedron. Essentially, these points that have 3 of them at it get a little bit shorter, and the points that have 5 at it stay in the same place. And so this piece right here, this connecting of 2, gets bent. And that's what I see when looking at this one, right? That this goes back, and it's like it's connected to the one in the back, but there's a bend right there, right? This one right here goes in, and it connects to this one over here, but it's, oh, I just drew on it for some reason, but it bends right there. Okay. Next one. This is also a stellated Triacus icosahedron. It works a little differently, where the last one was stellated, leaving just a little bit of that long edge in it. This one is stellated with the points being off the other side. So what's left is just a little bit of the triangular tip here. So you can see if you look down a threefold axis, like right in here, there's 3 coming together. That right there is one of these little points. Okay, it's like this one over here maybe. And it's got the same 12 points as before. It's still got 60 of these little pieces making up those 12 points, but none of them are coplanar with any others. There's 60 of them total. They are the 60 faces of the Triacus icosahedron. Now, if you just put tubes next to each other, the one for the Pentacus dodecahedron and one of these for the Triacus icosahedron, and I couldn't see down inside, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you which one it was. I could just know it was one of them or something else. Actually, when I was thinking I was going to have a full set of, I want all the 12-pointed stars that I could come up with that are stellations of something else. There's way more. I just ran out of time to make them all. There's so many more. Yeah. So anyway, and lastly, but not leastly, there is the stellated dodecahedron. Look at that. How do I know this is stellated dodecahedron? Well, I can look at these pieces. There's 60 of them, but I find 5 sets of 5 that are all coplanar. Like those 5 meet down in here. This one, this one, this one, this one, they all meet behind that spot right there. And those correspond to, 60 divided by 5 is 12. They correspond to the 12 planes of the dodecahedron. And I have a dodecahedron here that I built. It's not, this isn't in the finished mode, but I kind of liked the way this looked. It just had that rough look. The inlay hadn't been sanded down flat yet. Um, it, yeah, I really liked that dodecahedron. I say liked. I kind of ruined it when I was sanding it. I sanded it a little too far. Anyway, here's a sequence of 3 of those. This is the stellated triacontahedron. This is the stellated, this Pentacus dodecahedron, and here's the dodecahedron. Now, essentially, if you think about putting onto a dodecahedron, you put tiny little pyramids, just enough to be the Pentacus dodecahedron. So onto the faces, you put these little pyramids, and then you let that pyramid grow. At some point, it grows to be tall enough so that 2 adjacent faces of the dodecahedron, those 2 pyramids would line up to be coplanar, and that would be, you'd gotten to this stage now, where rather than having 60 triangles, it would suddenly turn into 30 rhombuses, right? And then if you look at the stellations of those things, as you deform one into the other, you transform this stellated dodecahedron into the stellated, whatever this is, Pentacus dodecahedron, and then into the triacontahedron. Okay. Yeah, and looking at these carefully, you can see how this would kind of be deformed. Where this piece goes in, sort of bends left, right, it sort of does this snake through there. This one looks like it was going to do that as well. It goes off to the left and then bends back to the right. But at that point, things have been twisted. And so it doesn't join up with this other one that's coming up here and then back over to that side, right? Because those, where these are coplanar, in the middle one, they've twisted. One twisting one way, one twisting the other way. And so that bend doesn't reconnect. They each connect to their separate pyramids. And then you get to the point where they bend so much that what used to be in line this way now becomes in line with other stuff, being this stellated dodecahedron here over on the right. Okay, so at some point now I need to see someone else do it or do it myself, make a computer animation that shows this continuous deformation of one star into another. I think it would be fabulous. Here is another sequence. The stellated triacontahedron here I have in the middle now. This is the second stellation we saw of the Triacus icosahedron, and this is the same Pentacus dodecahedron over here. And I put these in sequence because essentially, as we said, if you took that Pentacus dodecahedron and made the pyramids a little taller until they became a rhombus to get the triacontahedron, you can then take that and bend it on the other diagonal to make the Triacus icosahedron. And it would be interesting to see that deformation as well from one to the other and the corresponding stellations here. And really what's happening is these two, well, the one in the middle, you've got you've got 1 point over here, 1 point over here, and they're connected with this thing that comes in and connects like that. It snakes its way in and snakes its way out. Well, on the one on the right over there, the Triachus, no, the Pentachus dodecahedron, they have these things like bending in as well, but they miss like that. As you deform, those would then come together like this. And then on the one on the left there, they miss this way. They cross over each other. It makes it a deeper weave, a tougher weave to do. And it is also, I would then want to go one step further and say keep going, because that then turns into that stellation of the icosahedron that we've seen many, many times. The 12-pointed star there. So yeah, they're just fun correspondences between all of these things. Let's see. One last picture here from Stellations. Just kind of a family picture of the ones I've made here recently. Each of these is made out of cedar, laser cut. Yeah. So, next. Boxes. A lot of the stars that I've made, I have shipped off to various people, various family members. I've got 4 sisters and a brother, each of whom I sent a star. As I said, my cousin got one, various other people have gotten one. And this star, unfortunately, arrived not in this form. It arrived looking like this. Yeah, that was not good. I was actually surprised. In some ways, I was surprised that only one of them didn't make it, but this was the only one. It's made out of oak, and I've just given up working with oak. It's too brittle. So anyway, I built my sister a new one. This, instead of oak, this is now mahogany. And again, I don't know what the inlay is. It's that light stuff that I have that I really like. I think, who knows what it is. But this time I needed to protect it better in shipping. So I made a box. This box is just a press board, piece of scrap that's been around the shop for a while. But it's an icosahedron. An icosahedron has 12 vertices, so each of the points of the star can sit right into one of those points of the icosahedron, and the little holes are used to put zip ties through, and you've got this beautiful packaging. This then I would put inside a cardboard box with other packaging stuff, but the star itself is cocooned in this thing, and it's shipped very nicely. Likewise, here's the one that's sent to my cousin. This was just a cardboard box that I made with masking tape holding it together. I've done a couple other boxes as well to ship these things in. But I got thinking when I was making these boxes, it's like rather than having them cut, completely in half on the diameter essentially, what if I just took, the 5 pieces around one vertex, which then you get this flat pentagon, and use that as a lid and make a box. And all of a sudden I got thinking about my days, in high school, and I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I have, this collection of dice, and it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a box that's got, fancy designs on it? And so I got thinking about designs, and again, we're, in the time of the pandemic here, and family get-togethers were now Zoom, which meant, although my family lives on the other side of the continent, I could now be part of those gatherings, which was kind of fun. And after one of them, I talked to one of my nieces and said, I need some more ideas, because my ideas are all geometric in type. But here's what I'm thinking about doing. I also know she's a Dungeons and Dragons player. She's a really good artist. It's like, I want to make these boxes, and I want to put designs on them. Could you come up with some designs? And we had a couple of different ideas. A dragon was one of the things that we thought maybe. So anyway, I started making these boxes. All right, this is one of my first designs. This was ashwood with various inlays, The way they're woven is they've got these bands that go around on diameters, so each band is its own color. There are 6 colors there. This box was, actually this is probably the first one I did. Cedar and walnut, laser cut. The edges are 3¼ inches long. But yeah, this is my dice in there. It just has this one has a treasure box look to it. I haven't made another one of these yet, but that's a nice design. This one just, it's like, well, I gotta make a 20-sided box. I might as well make it look like, do one that looks like a 20-sided die. So, you want to put your dice on a big 20-sided die. So I started making them with a set of matching dice. So the piece of wood that I used to cut the box with, I also cut the dice with. All right, so this was a piece of ash with walnut inlay. Here's another one of my early designs. I call it linked rings. You can see, each edge there's essentially a hexagon link, and then each face has a triangle link. There's there must be 6 different colors here, or 5 different colors. Well, 6. There's 5 colors of hexagon and then 1 color of the triangles. This was made on commission for a colleague of mine. And so those, let's see, we looked at 4 different ideas that I've had. I'm still waiting for that niece to come back with some ideas. And by the summer of 2021, I decided it was safe enough to fly back east and attend a family reunion, which was held outdoors with masks. We were very careful about not spreading any diseases. But it gave me a chance to sit down with each of my nieces and nephews because I had come up with a different plan. In that I brought, the 4 designs you've already seen with me to say, hey, look, these are some of the things I can do. I want to make each one of you a box and give me ideas. What kind of design might you want on it, right? So one nephew said, how about a Celtic knot? Some people call it Celtic knot, but remember, we're from the Boston area and they're Celtics. So Celtic knot. And yeah, so this is what I came up with. It's got the trefoil knot with, typically you see just a trefoil knot with a circle, but I made it in such a way that those circles can be attached to each other and they weave around. So there's one color that goes along the diameter going one way, and then another color goes the other way. So there's 6 different diameters there, and so the 7 colors total because the trefoil knot is 1 color. Of course, with matching dice. This was walnut with a bunch of different inlays. His sister, that nephew's sister, so my niece said, how about shamrocks? It's like, shamrocks, yeah. And then her sister said, oh, I'd like shamrocks too. And could you make one of the shamrocks a 4-leaf shamrock? So I did make 2 boxes of these. One, actually you can tell that these are the 2 different boxes because on the one on the left here, the vines connect to each other as they pass through the edge, but on the right, they weave as they go through the edges. So yeah, these are my shamrock boxes, and yes, there is 1 4-leaf shamrock on each box. I don't think it's visible in either picture here. Again, with matching dice. This was a piece of maple, and the green is just a dyed green wood. I have no idea what type of wood it is. I just bought dyed green wood as an inlay. All right, and so then let's see. The next niece said, fire. It's like, oh, I had these visions of the box being just, engulfed in flames, from the bottom to the top. And I'm not that good an artist. It's like trying to draw the fire and figure out how you see, I look online at different things that people have done. It's like, oh, this would look cool, this would look cool. But it's like, I need to draw it. It needs to be my drawing. And so it's like, God, I just need to just let me get one tongue of flame and see. So I drew it like a candle flame, and then I realized if I put that candle flame on each edge, I can do it like an Escher, and it will look awesome. And sure enough, um, the base wood here is a rosewood. The inlay is the red is just a dyed red, just like the dyed green. The middle color, sort of the orangish one, is a peach, I believe, and then a yellow heart on the inside there for the yellow. Yeah, this one, I really liked how this came out. Fire. So, all right, so that was one niece. Then her brother, my nephew, says snakes. I want snakes. And so we made this box. This is an interesting one mathematically because there's a lot of combinatorics you can take a look at. There's 5 colors of snakes, and they're arranged in such a way that each color tries to stay as far apart as possible, and I end up with a perfect 5 coloring of the icosahedron. There's also things like each face has 3 different snakes on it, 3 different colors. How many ways can you choose 3 out of 5? Um, you can do the calculation. There's 20 faces here, and the answer is either 20 or 10. So you either see each combination once or you see it twice on. I believe the answer is 10, and you see each combination twice on opposite faces, so you never see the same 2 at the same time. Also, there's the matter of around each of the points are all 5 colors, but they're in different arrangements. And how many different arrangements can you do of the 5 snakes in a circle? The 5 colors. There's 12. There's 12 corners there, and the answer is either 12 or it's 6, and you see each of the arrangements once or twice. I think it's 6, and you see them twice. But anyway, there's some interesting combinatorics there. Okay, so there was the third member of that family says, I want snakes as well. And so I can't do the same box. These 2 boys are too competitive. I can't just give them both the same thing like the 2 sisters got. They're fine with that. So it's like something, they got to do something completely different. So one's got the light wood, this one's got a dark wood. It's still snakes, but they're doing something different. These are weaving around each other. I was very happy with the arrangement. This is similar to, I think, the first box I showed, just with curves rather than more angular pieces. So the colors, there's 6 different colors of snakes. They are a perfect coloring of the box, other than the fact that the heads and the tails of the snakes aren't as symmetric as I would like, and that bugged me. I worked, I tried so many different things. There is some symmetry to them, but there's not as much as I would have liked. Eventually, it's like, I just got to get this done. I got to build this, right? So we move on to the next family, and nephew Nick says, steampunk. I want steampunk. And it's like, oh, steampunk. It's like lots of gears and pistons and overly mechanical, the old driving the old steam engines, or the steam engines driving other things really is what all the machinery was. So I settled on this gear idea. There are 5 different colors, and of the big gears, there are 5 different shapes that I used. Now I wanted to, again, spread things out as evenly as possible, do a perfect 5 coloring. And it turns out that there's 2 perfect 5 colorings that I could have used, and they're mirror images of each other. So what I chose to do is I let the shapes do one of the 5 colorings and the colors do the other 5 colorings. So if you look, say, over here in the picture on the right, there's this gear, and I see it again over there, but it's a different color. You will find that gear 2 other times, and they will be 2 other colors. And likewise, each gear appears 4 times, but always on a different color, right? Because the colors do one pattern and the gears do the other pattern. Right? You can see the choice in a way right here in that in choosing how to color the small ones, right? I've got a purple gear right there, and of the small ones, I've got all 5 colors around every corner. And so this purple gear is as far away from that purple gear as it could be. Well, there's really two places it could have been, because it could have been here or it could have been there. So there's a right-handed way I could have done it or a left-handed way I could have done it. And I made one choice and went from there. So the colors do that, and the shape of the gears essentially do the other way. His sister came through and said, "How about a dragon?" Now, it turns out that she did not design the dragon, but her partner did. Together they worked on it. And this is the dragon box. I attempted at first to make it out of ebony, but the ebony is just too dense and dark, and the laser didn't cut through it. By the time I could get the laser to cut through, it was essentially charcoal. So I punted, and I had a bunch of ebony veneer, which I put on a maple core. So it's essentially a plywood. It has ebony, maple, ebony, 3 layers. And then the laser cutter did just fine. This was just a whole different beast to put together. On all the other ones, I would cut out all the triangles. Well, I would engrave the gaps for the inlay, cut the triangles out, glue all the inlay in, and then glue the whole thing together. For this one, I did the inlay in rather big pieces and didn't cut the triangles until all the inlay was done. I had to keep taking it out of the laser, putting the new inlay in, pressing it flat, letting the glue dry, putting it back in the laser, doing the next color. It was just a different process. So the dragon, it's hard to see from this point of view, but it's one dragon that snakes its way all the way around. You can see the head, you can see the tail, but on the back side it's one continuous dragon all the way around. And I realized that once I got it done that I had to make another one, because it was Laura who did the design, and Laura should get one as well. So, and we made another dragon box. This one, it's the same dragon, different color scheme, and the wood to make the box this time was black palm. Now, black palm is pretty interesting because it's a palm tree. It's a type of palm, and palms are almost more grass than they are wood. The grain is just so different. It's just a different thing to work with, but it looks so cool. Yeah, so this was black palm. You can see in the picture on the right there, the show the backside of the dragon this time as well. Yeah, of course the matching set of dice to go with it. So there was that. Once I got these all shipped out, my dad got to see a few of them, and I could tell that he would really like one. So after I finished making them all for the nieces and nephews, I made one more. A few years ago, my mom had asked what do I want for Christmas, and I said, just some interesting wood, something interesting. Now, my idea of interesting and her idea of interesting are clearly different, because what she sent me was this package of, I think there were 3 boards in it that were maybe 16 inches long each, 3/4 inch thick. They were fir boards from the old front porch. When my brother had redid the front porch, he saved some of the wood, and so this wood was it's probably 100 years old. I mean, so it's pretty cool that way. But it was, rotten in places. It had nail holes in it. It's like, what the heck am I going to do with this? So it stayed in my shop for a while. As I think, it's like, I'm going to make something for my parents with it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And so finally, when it was clear that Dad wanted a box, like, well, maybe. So I ran it through the belt, what the heck is that? The bandsaw, to cut it down to the 1/8 inch thickness, and sanded it, and found that there was enough good wood in there to make a box out of. I mean, you can still see when you take a look at the lid, for instance, on that one, that there's places where there's still nail holes showing, and it's not perfect, but I think it was still pretty good. It has a history for them, which was kind of fun to work with too. So The pattern itself, the basket weave pattern, is one that I had done earlier, but I hadn't actually built it yet. I did a set of platonic solids at about 1.5 inch edge lengths with the basket weave. I don't have a picture of it here in this video, but you can see what the icosahedron looks like. So there's 3 stripes that run in each direction. Yeah, it was a lot of inlay. It took a while, but it was definitely worth it. And so this was made for my dad. And with that, I will conclude this this video. I've done a bunch more things, and I will showcase them in other videos. So thanks for watching this far. And if you do nothing else with your math, please enjoy.